Hello, everybody. This is Big Lundy coming back at you with another discussion for the day from Zennistrad 1. Everybody, you might know him from YouTube.
Hello.
All the wonderful things that he does on this website, talking to people like Sargon of Akkad and his people. The most fun thing to do on the internet.
That's actually the funny thing, though, is that I actually have kind of talked to him in person, like on Skype, and that's actually one of the things I kind of want to talk about here is just my biggest issue with him is that based on my interaction, he is capable of being a nice person, and emphasis on capable, because most of the time he's not. And I think a large part of the reason for that is that he's basically built his entire career off of not being a nice person. This is something that someone on Reddit brought up in response to one of his videos. I think it was a post that linked to his video on r/bad politics. And this describes his kind of method. It describes his method perfectly, and it's indicative of a big problem with YouTube culture in general. I think. This user on Reddit, he says that the thing that Sargon and other people like him, like Teal'Deer, the things that they do is they show short clips of their opponent in the discussion in which they make small mistakes, laugh at their mistakes, and pedantically correct them to make them seem less intelligent. Take clips in which the opponent says something that would seem exaggerated out of context, like a Marxist using the word oppression or a woman using the word harassment, etc. Based on these clips, make a petty insult against your opponent, right? How they're just being whiny losers and how they don't have real problems. And then once your opponent makes actual arguments, present an incredibly weak rebuttal. It doesn't matter how good it is. You've already established yourself as smart and your opponent is dumb and whiny. So therefore you automatically win. And like, that's just such an apt description. I think that's what his method is. Because if you actually look at his videos, he spends so much time just cutting into an opponent and just sort of mocking, insulting them for no reason whatsoever. And it kind of builds them, whoever he's responding to, as just being unintelligent and whiny. And
the funny thing about that is that none of that sort of strategy is actually necessary. Not here on YouTube anyway. I mean, things are already so divisive that if you just make a video espousing a somewhat popular point of view, at least surrounding people who are going to more likely watch your video, then they're gonna basically agree with you anyway. Like when I was having my conversation with Chris earlier, he was talking about how the people who hate him the most right now are basically the people who were the biggest sycophants when he was still like starting on and doing his normal videos. And I'm pretty sure that's probably the case with a lot of people. Like if Sargon came out against an MRA, right, and like say he went up against like Bane 666, and he said something against him, there would be a huge amount of people who would just be all up his ass on that, and it wouldn't take anything. And he could be right. His arguments can make total sense. His arguments can make total sense. He could be right. He could be entirely in the right about whatever it is he's saying. But he's going against Bane, and that's not right. You can't be doing that because Bane espouses the same views that his sycophants do. And if you do that, then you're a bad person. Like, they're to the point where basically if he gets his ass kicked in a debate, which he has on a couple of different occasions now.
Oh, yeah. Did you see the one with Jenny Goodchild? That was fucking amazing.
Yeah, that one was fucking great because she basically got him to say Gamergate is all about feminism. Like, she got him to say that. And basically what people did is they took that debate and they said, oh, that wasn't really a debate. It was a discussion, and she was being a troll the whole time.
I think that's actually one of the reasons why he's kind of avoided me, because I've actually asked to do a live stream with him to kind of put things behind us, kind of offer him the olive branch. And he told me something along the lines of, I've been offline for the past few days, which is why I haven't responded to you. And I actually doubt that's actually true, because I know that he has left comments online before he responded to me saying that he's been online for the past few days, during that past few days. So I don't know. But, you know, I don't hold anything against him personally. I've sort of resigned myself to the fact that he is the way he is. Nothing I do is really going to change that. So I don't hate him. I think he's obnoxious and kind of an asshole, but, you know,
I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt.
That's his job, so I can't hold that against him. At least not.
I'm going to give him a little bit of the benefit of the doubt on this. I think one of the reasons he's probably not going to do it is because there was an issue of his subscribers like coming over to you and like just harassing the fuck out of you in the comment sections, like just
yeah,
not.
That is true. Maybe I am being a little bit uncharitable.
And he did say that he was not happy with that happening, and so there's at least that as one reason why. Like I've already argued with you once. It caused these guys to come over and be assholes. Where I don't want to do it again. Basically, that might be the case. It might be the case that he's just like he's just disinterested in it. It's weird because he answered to my call to have a debate with him about the whole drunk sex thing after I was on the Drunken Peasants show.
That's actually one of the things that I'm going to address in a future video I'm planning on. It's probably going to be my longest video yet. It's inspired a lot by Chris's "What Is Wrong with Feminism" series, which I disagree with some of the things that he said and done. I love quite a lot of them, like during that whole drama. But if there's one thing that I could have just kept after he just quit YouTube, it would have been that series.
Really good. It was really well done.
Like, because one of the things I'm going to be addressing a lot of common. It's not going to be a response to anyone in particular, but it's going to use like clips from various MRA videos and other videos like that, addressing some of the common arguments against the existence of rape culture. Because you know, a lot of their, I just don't find so many of their arguments are convincing. These people, they say things like rape culture doesn't exist because everyone knows rape is bad. But if you've actually watched last week's night's with John Oliver's episode on sex education, the problem isn't necessarily that people don't understand rape is bad. A lot of people do understand rape is bad. I would say most people do. The problem is not everyone understands what consent is. And that's the issue. So that's what we mean when we say teach people not to rape.
One of the things that I actually want to bring up with him is that the law actually basically says that if you're sober and the other person is visibly intoxicated to the point where you can reasonably ascertain that fact, then proceeding to have sex with them is, under the law, under federal law, sexual assault. Like that.
It's the same logic that's used in contract law. In contract law, if someone is so intoxicated that they cannot understand the nature and consequences of the contract, then they can sue to have the contract voided.
Yeah.
So it's the same line of reasoning.
It is. And you know, when they brought up, well, it's not like I can sign up for a Verizon contract while I'm smashed and I can just call them up the next day and say I was drunk when I agreed, you guys are in trouble. Like, well, yeah, because that stuff is usually done online or through an automated phone system. Nobody is convincing you to do it, so you're doing it of your own volition. That's why there's a huge difference here. If somebody's actually talking to you, if a person is selling you a product while you are visibly intoxicated, they're taking advantage of you. Like, can we not agree, at least on a baseline assumption, that if somebody is visibly intoxicated, you trying to convince them to do any X, Y, and Z, whatever that may be, is taking advantage of the fact that they're invisibly intoxicated? Is that not something that we can agree on?
Yeah. And the thing is, though, is that I'd actually found evidence of this whole contract law thing about this being established in contract law from the Supreme Court. And this was in the, I think it was in the 1800s. It's been established by the Supreme Court since the 1800s. So, yeah, but anyway, what I wanted to talk about, this is going on a bit of a tangent, but one of the things that I kind of want to talk about first is my big problem with YouTube culture, and why I've moved away from doing video responses. A lot of this realization came after I had that big spat with Sargon Akkad, but there's been a lot of other things too. I think that the problem with YouTube in general is that a lot of people focus way too much on quote unquote ponage, meaning that they're just trying to make their opponent look silly. And even people who I like and respect are guilty of this. Like, I love Kevin Logan's series, The Descent of Manosphere. I think it's fucking hilarious. I'm rolling in laughter almost every time I watch one of those videos. But they're clearly not meant to be constructive. They're not meant to actually engage seriously. They're just meant to point and laugh. And I just have to wonder, it's good catharsis, but what's the value in it beyond that? And
yeah.
And that's something I kind of want to avoid. I am going to be doing something, I'm going to be doing a response to Vernaculus on the wage gap, since he responded to me first, and that's my rule. I won't do a response to anyone unless they respond to me first. But I don't anticipate that I will be doing any other like actual responses to other people like that anytime soon. I'm just going to be responding to talking points, and that's something that I think Captain Andy has done as well. Mostly. There are some exceptions. Like whenever someone criticizes him, he immediately goes on the defensive. But that's something that he's been doing too.
I haven't really watched Captain Andy lately. I mean, I don't really know what he's been up to.
He's been kind of just talking about. He doesn't really focus as much on social justice issues. He also does some. He had commentary on things like politics and veganism. That's one of his big things. He's big into veganism, you know, regarding this whole recent drama that's been happening, I was actually on a Skype call with Chris a few weeks ago. I talked about him with a few things regarding the drama. One of the things he said to me, I'm paraphrasing here, so Chris, if you're watching, forgive me if I don't say this exactly right. One of the things he said to me was, you know what I should have done? I should have not made this into this big, huge drama. I should have just said, hey guys, there are these people who are spreading rumors about me. I just want to say that they're not true, and just left it at that. And I'm like, okay, did you just agree with Captain Andy there?
Yeah, he said that in the talk that I had with him before.
Yeah, I'm like, atheist hell has just frozen over.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, so much of the drama that happens, just in the grand scheme of things, when you, okay, so this is gonna seem like a very weird thing, but this is related. So, do you know who I Must Destroy All is?
Oh, is he the guy who made this really long takedown of Mr. Repzion, the guy in the mask?
The troll mask guy, yeah.
Yeah, that guy. I haven't watched many of his videos. I saw the one on Mr. Repzion, but that was about it.
So, basically, I look at I Must Destroy All as the representation of what I feel is the drama wars on YouTube and what tends to happen. Because if you took an outside person who has no knowledge of YouTube, as far as like personalities or anything along.
I didn't get I Must Destroy All at first because I wasn't familiar with the YouTube culture. I didn't actually become aware of the atheist YouTube circle until about 1.5 years ago. I didn't start making videos until about a year ago.
So you can probably empathize with this then when I say, like, if a person comes into YouTube not knowing anything and they see I Must Destroy All, they'll be freaked the fuck out. Like, they see him and with his little voice modulator and his mask and trying to take people down with his demonic logic. Like, and a person coming into YouTube would be like, what the hell is this? What is going on right now? And I think that's how a lot of them most likely would react to most of the drama videos that happen. Is if you're not involved in the community,
the people who I'm inclined to agree with on most social issues have done a few shitty things that, one of the reasons why I don't really trust Hannibal anymore is how recently I'd asked him if he was going to take down his videos about extremely boring, just so we could kind of heal that and kind of move beyond that. And he was like, okay, and he did that. But then I found out not too long afterwards that he put them back up again. When I asked him, hey, why did you put those back up when you said you were going to take them down on Twitter? He said, well, it doesn't matter anyway, so why should I bother? And I'm like, dude. And what's frustrating about this is that I actually politely asked Sargon of Akkad to take down his videos against me on Skype, and he agreed rather graciously. And I'm like, and he's not done anything to put them back up since. So I'm like, is Hannibal really just going to let Sargon of Akkad look like the better person here? Is that actually happening? Like, holy shit. I still respect that he's one of the few YouTubers who actually does research when he's talking about the issue that he has expertise in, which is anthropology. That's something that not a lot of YouTubers do. But I just don't like him in the way that I used to, like, just because of that one thing.
I haven't talked to Hannibal in a while, and Hannibal, if you're watching, hi. But one of the things, like, I like Hannibal. I do. We've talked a lot. We've bullshitted a lot. We've taken part in a lot of shit together as far as like our online escapades go. But there are some things that sort of just rub me wrong about him. I remember when
there was that whole thing about Thunderfoot where, like, I agree with him that Thunderfoot is an asshole. That he's probably one of the biggest assholes ever. Like,
like we can all agree that Thunderfoot is basically
like, he also said a few things about like how like if you ever met Thunderfoot, he would punch him in the face, and I'm like, and then Thunderfoot, as soon as he heard that, he just took that and ran with it. He's like, Anita Sarkeesian fan threatens physical violence on critic, and was like, okay, he's not a fan of Anita Sarkeesian, but you know, if you're just going to go around saying that if you meet someone in real life, you would punch them in the face, what are you going to expect? What do you expect?
But there was another weird ass thing that he said, which was that he was going on some sort of weird rant. And this was in a Skype call that I don't think anybody's privy to, aside from like a very few amount of people.
Are you sure you want to be talking about this?
No. This isn't any private information.
Okay.
It has to do with his views on Thunderfoot. Basically, I don't exactly know what prompted this, but basically what he said is that we have to fight against Thunderfoot, because if we don't, he's going to create the next Hitler. And I'm like, I think you're blowing things a little out of proportion. That's not really.
Well, wait. To be fair, Chris kind of did say something less extreme than that, much less extreme than that, but similar to that in his little spat with Gary Edwards, where he said he was afraid that what he was saying might affect public policy someday. And that's understandable, but saying that it would create the next Hitler...
Well, even then, like, when I was having my chat with Chris earlier, he came to the conclusion very shortly after shutting down his Questions On account that YouTube actually does not affect anything in the real life. It really doesn't. There's nothing going on here that's going to do anything in reality. Like, nobody's taking their political videos.
Here's the thing. Like, when I stumbled across atheist YouTube about 1.5 years ago, I was just I was initially in support of it because I consider myself a secular humanist, not secular humorist. I think secularism can be humorous, like in the way, like maybe George Carlin, someone like that. But I'm a secular humanist. I think that religion should generally, I think that it should be something people should be allowed to have as an option, but I don't think that it should have any control over our lives in an organized fashion. So I sympathized with it, but then I had discovered so many of these videos which were just so awful. And like, I discovered that one video that Cult of Dusty made about how Black Christians are Uncle Toms, and I'm like, okay, are you just going to dismiss the entire civil rights movement as Uncle Toms? Like, holy fuck, are you that fucking stupid? And that just sort of tainted my perception of atheism, at least in its online incarnation, forever, even though I am an atheist myself.
Well, here's the thing: if we were to just go into these, if somebody from outside of YouTube were to come into YouTube and see some like sympathetic views to whatever it is that they're thinking at the time, and they get interested in it, the thing that has to be borne in mind is that no totality of representation of any one ideology or any one position at all is going to be without problematic aspects and elements.
Yeah, that's true. That is absolutely true.
Every single movement, every single philosophy has somebody who advocates for it that's a total fucking asshole and stupid. Like, that's just a fact. You're gonna find stupid feminists out there.
Oh yeah, I've actually dealt with a few of them myself. Like even some like I've said, even people who I otherwise agree with, I've done some foolish things. Like Kevin Logan, when Jenny McDermott did this whole thing about outing Armored Skeptic as a sexual harasser, I'm like, okay, sure. Then Kevin Logan made this video where he basically calls Shoe On Head a slut, and I'm like, okay, that's kind of not cool. And you know, this is just something that I think is in fact a major issue. I've actually made a video about this, though, is that people are reluctant to criticize this, because as soon as you do criticize this, then people are reluctant to criticize feminists within their own movement, because as soon as you do that, the MRA brigade is going to just jump in and say, aha, see, we were right. And that's the same thing. They actually did that when Chris came out and started making his own video. It's so fucking difficult, because opportunists will just take advantage of that. It's something you always have to try. You have to try to be careful of. You have to, and that's why that's why I'm not really going to be speaking out too much against what's happening with Kevin Logan and Siobhan Head and that sort of thing. I'm
entirely uninvolved in that, to the point where I've watched 2 videos and I went, "This is 10 pounds of nope in a 5-pound bag." That's that. Fuck that.
I'm going to say I think that it's kind of shitty, but I'm just going to leave it at that, because I'm not going to let the MRA brigade just suddenly go in and say, see, this proves that everything we say is right, because no, it fucking doesn't, you assholes. Yeah.
All right. So, ponage culture itself, as we've established, basically, is a huge focus on basically preaching to the choir, in my opinion. From the way I look at it, it seems to me that there's very little need to be skillful, to be artful, to be methodic, to research shit. Like, as long as you're saying what your baseline wants you to say, then you're going to get agreed with. You're going to get views, you're going to get likes, you're going to get everything that you need. That's all that's required. Like, my earlier, again, I keep fucking referencing this, but my earlier conversation with Chris got over 30 thumbs down before we even got done. And that's merely a result. Like, I was trying to rack my brain. I'm like, did we talk about anything particularly controversial? And not really. We really didn't. But it still got so many thumbs down. And I'm like, it's basically just because he's in the video.
Like, yeah, that's the thing. Like, there's someone who I follow. Forgot his name, but it has a bunch of both uppercase and lowercase letters in it. Starts with an S. Yeah, that guy. I think he's not a bad person. I think that he's just been really invested in what's happening. But at some point I kind of have to ask, what exactly do you want to happen to Chris? He's already basically a social pariah. And, you know, I agree that some of the things that he did were pretty shitty. So what more do you actually want? It's not, like what can people do to him at this point?
And aside from just, you know, say, this person's terrible, I hope he dies.
yeah, there's really not much anyone can actually do. But you know,
they do still do it because he still has YouTube channels they can do that on, so they do.
Yeah, and the thing is, he's talking about movies. That's all he's talking about now.
Like, it can the ability to just let shit go is not something that seems to be in a lot of people's vocabulary, I guess.
Well, to be fair, there are people who I think do have good reason to not let shit go. I think that given the gravity of what has been going on here, I think people are naturally going to be attached to that. But
well, yeah, like gains.
I'm kind of self-parking it here.
I'm just saying, like, you know, gain a little bit of perspective. Like, really, when you get down to it, all the drama that surrounded Chris was somebody accused him of doing something, and he claims he didn't do it. We don't have evidence either way, so we're gonna have to just let it go. And then more shit happened involving him and some trans person that almost nobody knows. That was apparently inappropriate.
Yeah, he still denied that it was dead naming. I explained why I didn't think it was dead naming in one of my videos. Which
the whole dead naming thing to me is just kind of, that's still a subject that I'm just out on the house on, because
yeah,
there's too much stuff that just remains unexplained to me as far as like how it works. works and what exactly is the makeup and the mechanisms that make it an incorrect action to do. Like it,
so,
and a full explanation as to what it is and why it's wrong, and it would be very much helpful.
I guess that issue is actually something that issue of dead naming, that is something that is kind of very personal to me, because I follow a bunch of people who of varying gender identities on social media, and I've counted no less than four of them who have been in unsupportive environments, and 4 of them who have at some point expressed suicidal ideations, and probably because of that. So this is something that I get very emotional about very quickly, because one of them was someone who I consider to be a rather close acquaintance. So it's just something that does affect me, because I actually feared for a moment there, like this was about a year ago, that I might actually lose someone who I was fond of. That was frightening, legitimately frightening. So yeah, boy, I killed the mood there, didn't I?
No, it's fine. Like this is an informal conversation what we're having right now. It's totally fine. I get where you're coming from. In fact, the place of work right now, and I'm probably going to be talking about this a lot because honestly, it has lots.
I'm going to stand here for a second, so pardon me if there's a little bit of background noise.
But the place I'm working at now, as I've explained before, it's a rehab center, and on a monthly basis, we get a new trans person in all the time. And I am just so frustrated with how they deal with it, because half the workers there are transphobic as shit. And the company appears to be putting forward a sort of implicit statement, because if you're a trans woman, but you haven't gone through the operation yet, you're in the male cabins. You're not in the female cabins. So there's an implicit statement there of them saying you're not a woman yet. And they try to explain, when I ask higher ups about it, they try to explain it to me. Well, sometimes if they don't look like a guy, then if they don't look like a woman, then they look like a guy. Then some of the women who have gone through some traumatic experiences in their lives might have an issue with them being in their place. And I'm like, it's a traumatic experience to be a trans person in the wrong body for so long of your life. Like, if you're worried about trauma, then you should be worried about them. And really what you're doing is you're putting a woman in a cabin with a fuck ton of guys. Like, would you do that to any other woman? And they wouldn't. And they're also worried, like, oh, they might have sex with them. Well, they already have sex. Like, it's something that we're supposed to stop. We're not supposed to allow it to happen. But the amount of sex that happens in that rehab center is insane. And it's usually between women too. Like, that's where most of it happens. But they're still worried about it, and they make all these implicit statements, and the workers are just entirely unsupportive. One of them, oh my God, I wanted to punch him in the face. He came up to me and he said, "We got another trans person in here." I'm like, "Oh, okay, what's their name?" "Well, their real name's Richard." I'm like, fuck. I'm like, "Did you just say their real name is Richard?" He's like, "Yeah, he wants to be called Mariah, so he won't."
Okay, so here's the thing though. If someone gets married and they take their spouse's name, do you insist that their real name is their maiden name? No, you don't see that happening.
Obviously not. No. It's like. That bothers the crap out of me. The way they treat people, and I've lodged complaints, but nobody's doing anything about it. And it's not even just them either. It's the other clients. The guys like harass the hell out of them, like just yelling at them. "You were born a man. Your mama gave you a man's name. You're bad." Like, it's just it frustrates the hell out of me.
Yeah, I can see where that's gone, but boy, that got very emotional very quickly.
Yeah, like I understand where you're coming from with the frustration aspect. I do. The thing for me is purely like an intellectual question, because I've been able to map out most of my meta-ethical position and most of my normative ethical positions.
I wish I knew enough about philosophy to say that.
Well, I haven't completely found it out, because completely figuring out would be a phenomenal.
Nobody's done that yet. So,
But no,
as far as I know, nobody's found like the perfect system of morality.
No, not at all. But I'm looking at the concept of dead naming, and I'm looking at it, and I'm seeing a bunch of different ways that it can be taken, and a bunch of different ways that it's being explained to me, and a bunch of different ways in which it can be wrong. And I can accept that in some ways that it can be wrong. Like obviously, if somebody takes a name, and you know that they want you to call them a particular name, and yet you insist on not doing so, that would be dead naming. That would be wrong. And
sure.
my understanding, that's what Chris did, is that he knew what the trans person wanted to be called and insisted on calling her by her birth name, so to speak. And yeah, I can see how that's wrong. But then we have the other question of, okay, so if you call anybody by a name in which they don't want to be referred to as, is that wrong? And in that sense, I don't know if that's actually wrong, because if you look
at the comparison that he made, well, okay, this is how I would explain it. The comparison that he made is that he said that he dead names Thunderfoot all the time since he doesn't like being called Phil Mason. There you go. But the way I explained it is that okay, the thing is though is that he can. The thing is though is that the reason that trans people usually don't want to use their dead name in online spaces is because it's often the only space where they can actually safely use their actual name, and that's kind of the difference, I thought. But there's you know there's a lot more to it that I guess I don't really know about, since I'm not really entirely privy to exactly what happened. But you are right. That it does get kind of complicated, I guess. And admittedly, I'm not really as knowledgeable on trans issues as some of the people who I follow and who followed me. I think that some of the people who I think that someone else actually wanted to call me out on some of the ignorant things that I'd said. So what came on? I lost my train of thought. Sorry. Like as I was saying, I'm not transgender myself. I'm reasonably confident in saying that. And, you know, I do fuck up sometimes. There was one person who wanted to call me out for saying some things that they thought were pretty fucked up about trans and non-binary identities. So, you know, that's something I will admit that I'm not an expert on, or even really as knowledgeable as some of these people are on. I'm not really the person you would go to.
Well, I mean, neither one of us is really the person you would go to as far as like what it's like to be a transgender person and that experience and what would be helpful.
Well, it's not just about experience, though. It's that most of what I've learned has been picked up from people who have actually read more about it than I have. So, yeah. And it's actually the same way. I feel the same way about my political. And I actually feel the same way about my political leanings right now. I don't identify as a liberal anymore. I've not identified as a liberal for a while, several months at least. I now consider myself a socialist. I tend to lead towards anarchist socialism, but I have to read a lot more before I can actually start speaking out about anarchism, because the biggest problem with anarchism, in my opinion, is that in order to be a well thought out anarchist, in order to be a consistent anarchist, you have to do a shitload of reading. That's the problem with anarchism. You have to read a fucking lot.
You do. You know, so many anarchists don't. Like, there's so many ANCAPs who say things.
Well, anarchism. Most of the anarchists who I know would argue that anarcho-capitalism is not actually anarchism.
That's fair enough. That's fair enough statement to make. I wouldn't necessarily disagree with that, but you know, it's still anarcho in the name. But regardless, what a lot of sort of like online libertarian or anarchist free market capitalists, blah blah, whatever they want to call themselves, what they do, this phenomenon, which is fairly consistent in that sense, is that they deny like social contract theory. Like they see that and they say, no, that's not real.
I didn't sign any social contract.
Yeah, I didn't sign it, so it's not real, it's not binding in any way. And yet, at the same time, in order for their philosophy to work, they have to adhere to that. Like, it doesn't make sense. And then they'll say something like, well, no, all that's required for us to have the society work is a non-aggression principle. Well, what's binding you to the non-aggression principle? Well, an agreement made by people that...
Here's the thing that bugs the shit out of me. Sorry, I had something on my foot. Here's the thing that bugs the shit out of me about the non-aggression principle. You would think that pollution would be considered a violation of the non-aggression principle. Because, you know, if you're polluting the air, that goes everywhere and it harms people. But nope, you see libertarians and online anarcho-capitalists saying that preventing people from polluting is a violation of the non-aggression principle, even though polluting is something that causes harm and would therefore be a violation of the non-aggression principle. So that drives me nuts.
The non-aggression principle is very incoherent in the way it's been explained to me anyway. And the fun thing for me is just at its very base, the only thing that binds somebody into following the non-aggression principle is a social contract, really. That, like, what prevents you from just violating it whenever you want? Well, because we agree with each other not to do this, and we'll stop you if you attempt to do this. Okay, well, what authority are you going to use to do that?
Well, the thing is, though, is that the thing about these anarcho-capitalists is that just baffles my mind, is that even fucking Ayn Rand agreed that there should be at least some state to prevent people from stealing or committing fraud or enacting violence upon other people. Minimal state that only really does protecting from those acts, but a state nonetheless. So how are they going to make that work?
And the problem that I have with hers is that her description of what state needs to exist in order for that to happen is such an impotent state that they really don't have the ability to enforce anything because they have nothing behind them.
Well, yeah, and the thing is that in the absence of state, then private institutions are going to take up all the form and function of a state inevitably. Without something to counteract the monopolies that they would inevitably have.
Oh Jesus! Like it's this, and again, this is the problem with people who get either all their information or argue solely or do basically everything involved in the conversation based off of shit they read on the internet. Like that's the main problem. Is that. That's
Don't you know that Stefan Molyneux is a genius philosopher and is always right about everything?
That's what we need right now. We need that genius philosopher, the philosopher king of Plato. No, that's not even a correct description of what he was referring to. But regardless.
Oh my God.
Oh my God. Okay, so we should.
One of the things I wanted to talk about was about this, this bizarre trend of social science denialism that's been going on for a while. I said this on Twitter a long time ago, but I said social science denialism is the new climate science denialism, and it really is. It really is. You see a bunch of people who just broad brush dismiss the social sciences, and they use the exact same methods and tactics that you see from climate science deniers or climate change deniers and from creationists. And how do I mean? Well, one of the first things that they do is that they engage in bizarre nitpicking of various studies, ones that do not necessarily dismiss the conclusions as a whole, but nevertheless, they use that to dismiss the conclusions of the study entirely anyway. The second thing they do is, and then once they do that with enough studies, they just declare the entire field of science to be junk, and that the people who are doing this research have ulterior motives and are trying to push some sort of political agenda. You see people saying that, for example, social sciences in academia are controlled by feminists or feminazis or leftists or what have you, or cultural Marxists. And it's the same thing with the people who say that all of the people who are researching climate change are only doing it because they want to be paid by the government in order to solve a problem that's not there. It's the same thing. And the second thing they do is that they cherry pick these tiny individual studies that confirm their worldview, even when the vast majority of the other body of the rest of the body of research does not agree with that. They ignore the vast overwhelming majority body of research and just focus on the 1 or 2 studies that confirm their beliefs. For example, most scientists agree that climate change is real and that it is man-made. But the climate change deniers will cite as an authority the 3% of the people who think that it is not a problem, 3% of scientists who think that it's not a problem. And in the same fashion, Hazy Brain, who you had a debate with earlier, that's what you called him. I forgot his actual name, but he cited that one study that showed no link between video games and sexism, even though it contradicted so many others, and even though it went over its own limitations in the study itself. He put that up and cited it as the authority that there is no actual real world impact of sexism in video games. So there we go. And the third thing that these people do, the third thing that these science deniers do, is that they will not accept any amount of evidence you give them. They continually ask for more and more and more evidence for your claims until you eventually reach a point where human knowledge cannot give evidence, because the thing is, science can never be certain about anything. It uses inductive reasoning. You see this with creationists who keep asking for more and more transitional fossils. They say, where are the transitional fossils between A and Z? You show them transitional fossil Y, they ask for one between A and Y. You show them you show them X, they ask for one between A and X, and so on and so on. And no amount of transitional fossils you will show them will convince them. As soon as you get to a point where you cannot show them a transitional fossil, they say, no, oh, this proves that evolution is false. There's no evidence for evolution. And people do this the same thing. People like MRAs do the exact same thing with research regarding gender bias. They ask for more, they dismiss evidence you give them, ask for more and more evidence. You give them more evidence, and eventually you reach a point where you can't give them any more evidence, in which case they declare victory. They go in already having decided that you're wrong no matter what you say. So when they ask for evidence, they're not actually wanting to be educated or entertaining the possibility that what you say might be correct. They just want to deny everything, and they're trying to exploit any gap in knowledge that they can find in order to say you have no evidence. So I'm sorry for the long rant. This is something that's been bothering me for a fucking long time.
That's totally all right. Consider me your therapist. And, you know, one of the things that kind of annoys me about people who are anti-social science is they'll use social science when it suits them. It's very similar to what you were talking about. They'll cite like the few studies that seem to confirm whatever bias they already have, and yet at the same time, whenever you come up with other studies that say no, that's not the case, or you actually read the study that they're using and you're just like, you're an idiot, you don't even understand what they're saying. They're like, oh well, it's all a bunch of shit anyway. Like, it's kind of hilarious. Like, you remember when I was going up against Heisenberg, and I was reading out the study.
I just called him Edgelord Hatman,
or Hazy Brain, as I like to call him. By the way, Heisenberg, hi! If you're watching this, please come on. I would love to talk to you. That'd be fun. But
I don't know if he'd appreciate that now.
I don't know, probably not. But you know, it's all in good fun. When I was going up against him and I was reading out the video game study and I was going over all the limitations and everything, he basically admitted to all the limitations and then said, "But fuck it anyway." Like he didn't care about all that, because that wasn't his response to me. Is he kind of skipped over most of what I said because I was just reading it out. And he just highlighted little portions of the actual paper and what it said. To say, yeah, but it does say in a little bit of this that they didn't find any correlation, or a strong correlation anyway. So there's that. And I'm like, I just read off all the limitations, and then he continues on. He's like, yeah, it says there's a bunch of limitations, but you know, it's social science. Who cares? I'm like, what? You can't cite a study for your position and then just dismiss it when someone reads it out to you and it doesn't say what you think it is.
Yeah.
His second video to me, no, actually his first video to me, I should say. Or was it 3 altogether? No, it was just the one.
I've stopped paying attention. No,
it was the one against you, and then I responded to that, and then he went one against me, and then I responded to that, and I think that was it. And his response to me, in general, was just nonstop what the fuckery of just like, you're reading the study in its entirety when you just need to read this one little like half a sentence, and that's all I needed. And fuck it anyway because it's all social science and who cares. And I'm against social science, but I'm not against science. I'm just against this thing because I don't think it's real, because it's not as proved as evolution, which is just weird. I don't know. It was just a whole bunch of like crazy, weird thoughts just like popping out there. Whatever he needed to say just to disagree with me. And it was really funny because I would read stuff. Is basically my response to him. I was reading stuff and telling him it doesn't say what you think it does. And when you pointed out,
wait. That reminds me of something. In my response video to Vernaculus on the wage gap, which I'm still scripting and recording right now. One of the things I did is I tried to counter. One of the things MRAs often claim as a sort of rebuttal to the wage gap is how women make 20% more than men in certain major cities. But one of the things I said was, okay, but that's not for the same work. So that argument is bullshit. It still doesn't say anything about the actual 5 to 7 cent wage gap, which is to the best of our ability to understand it for the same work. And one of the things Vernaculus said, like before one of the things he said before in the video, before I brought up why I cited that it's not for the same work thing. One of the things he brought up was, how can women be disadvantaged by a 5 to 7 cent wage gap if they're in certain major cities making 20% more than men? And I'm like, okay, it's not for the same work. And like immediately after that, when I pointed out that it's not for the same work, he goes, well, if anyone is saying that it is for the same work, then they're wrong. And I'm like, dude, you just did exactly the thing that you said was wrong right before you said it was wrong. How the fuck do you even do that?
Oh God. Like, does he realize that the 5 to 7% figure is based off of the same jobs, just as a general thing, not like
that's based on the Concept report and based on the AAUW report. But as Steve Shives brought up in his recent Off Monday ramble about the wage gap, there was a pay scale study which broke down the gender pay gap into each individual occupation. And they found that, yeah, there is still a gender wage gap of around 5 to 7 cents, depending on the field, in every occupation. So yeah, even when it is pretty much the same job, there is still a gap that persists.
So as I understand it, the Concept report was made back in 2000, I think 9, something along those lines. Because it was still during the Bush administration. So.
Yeah, it was made by the Bush administration. And one of the things that I found while researching it is that the standard 77 cent wage gap figure that these people love to cite as being bullshit, it measures only full-time year-round workers. But the Concept report includes part-time workers into its equation. So, this is misleading because the biggest factor into the explained wage gap was hours worked. But they're making it look like they're explaining more of it than they actually are, because they're including part-time workers who were not in the original 77 cent figure. So that's misusing statistics.
Yeah, I mean, the way I understand the Concept report is basically they tried to use all the explanations that your usual MRA uses as to why there's a discrepancy in general gender pay. And
yeah, I'm pretty sure that what they did was intentional in that regard, because it was commissioned by the Bush administration.
Yeah, and I was pretty sure about that too. And I pointed out, basically my whole contention is, okay, so even after using all the explanations you tried, you still came up with a wage gap. And that's not even the point of the 77 cent number, as has been explained by other people in the past, including here on YouTube, Brian Wiley. The 77% number is not meant as like, oh, same job, 77 cents. It's meant as This is the average amount that women make in comparison to men across the United States. And this cannot be said to be simply a result of women's free choices uninfluenced by society. That's just nonsense. Obviously, their choices are influenced by society. Obviously,
everyone's choices are influenced by society.
So many of the different factors that they try to use to explain the wage gap, like, women don't ask for raises as much, or
here's my contention with. Well, okay, I actually have two contentions with this. First of all, one of the things that Justicar brought up in the comments section of one of my wage gap videos, you know, that shithole, he said that, well, women take more benefits than men do, so the overall compensation gap must be lower. It might even disappear entirely when you take into account the benefits. But you know, I'm like, okay, but because of the way capitalism works, the value of the benefits is always going to be less than the reduction in wages that occurs as a result of taking benefits. That's how the people who give benefits have a profit motive too.
Yeah.
So that can't explain all of it. And also the other thing I also take issue with the very existence of wage negotiations in general. This is probably my dirty communist scum leanings, but I think that because it still puts you at the mercy of a boss, which I don't think is a justified form of hierarchy, I think that wage negotiations are just shit. And I also think that wage negotiations are shit because if you work exactly as well, if you do the exact same work as another employee, you can still make more money just by smooth talking or bullshitting your employer.
Yeah, and I've done it. I remember hell, I've done it when I was a worse worker than other people. And I'm not even gonna bullshit this. When I was about, I'd say 18, 19 years old, because I had this job for about 2 years, I had a job at a factory, and I was a shitty worker at this factory. I was late.
Factory in America.
I was late a bunch of times. I didn't do the work as hard as everybody else. Whenever there was downtime, instead of doing like sweeping up and shit, I would just lay down on pallets. Like, I don't even give a fuck. Like, I didn't do the work. And after about a year of working there and having the same wage as everybody else, I went into my boss's office. I'm like, I need a raise. And the boss looked at me and he just brought out a paper and he said, "These are all the violations that you've had in the past year. Now tell me why I should give you a raise." I'm like, take a look at those violations real quick. How many of them are in the past 6 months? He's like, "One of them." Okay, so clearly I'm getting better. Okay, so you're asking me to show you the money, and I'm asking you to show me the work. Well, I am showing you the work. If only one of those happened in the past 6 months, then there is a substantial increase in productivity that I have clearly been displaying in this particular workplace. And by the end of it, he's like, all right, fine, you get another $1 an hour. I'm like, thank you. Like, it was that easy. And I was a shitty ass worker. Now I'm paid more than people who work harder than me.
Did you have you ever read the comic strip Dilbert?
Oh, of course.
Yeah, Scott Adams, he's a massive sexist douche nozzle, of course, but he's made some really, really, really on-point observations about office culture, at least to my understanding of it. One of the things he said was that the character of Wally, the really, really lazy worker who somehow has managed to keep his job for years, Wally was based off of an actual employee that Scott Adams knew when he was at work, who was very, very close to retirement, and figured out that if he were to get fired, his severance package would actually be larger than the amount of money he would make until retirement. So he tried everything within his power to get fired, and didn't get fired.
Oh boy.
So that's not really related, but I just thought that was so fucking amusing.
But yeah, here's the big thing for me, is that there are gender problems with a lot of the quote unquote solutions that people have to the gender pay gap. The fucking negotiation thing being one of them. Of course, women are going to be less likely to negotiate for higher pay if they're being told that any sort of aggression on their end is a negative part of their personality and a character flaw. So they're going to accept things passively, including in
Well, here's the thing, though. The thing about that, though, is even if you just accept that women are somehow just naturally worse at wage negotiations, then okay, how does that still justify them being at a disadvantage? Because when we have people who are disabled in the workplace, we accommodate them.
Yeah.
So why would that? I don't agree that women are just naturally worse than at wage negotiations.
I don't agree that most of the status quo is just the natural way of things, and that's why we have.
Even if women were naturally just worse at them, why would that justify allowing them to be at a disadvantage?
Yeah.
So that's
like. Okay, so this is an argument I had with Vernaculus a little while back. Is he was trying to, I guess, debunk equal representation in the government, and the way. So the way that he was phrasing my argument, and the way that a lot of people who were commenting were phrasing my argument, is that I just wanted token minorities in government on the same level as the population, and I said no. My argument is merely that the current situation seems a little odd. Because basically, if we're going to go ahead and say that there is no social pressures whatsoever preventing anybody from succeeding on any particular level, then apparently the natural order of things is white people are just better at leading, which doesn't seem right to me at all. I seem to believe that.
Well, their argument is that white people are just more interested in leading, which is kind of a subtle way of saying that they're better at leading. At least as far as I'm concerned, because we can't.
Either one doesn't make any fucking sense to me. Like, how can you possibly determine that merely by the way things appear to be? Like, what are you investigating to confirm this hypothesis? Nothing. It's merely.
Well, they'll probably cite something like the fucking bell curve about black people.
Oh my god! Just don't even get me started on that shit. Don't even get me started.
I need to get around to reading the Mismeasure of Man sometimes.
It's a good one. I would definitely.
I've already read Delusions of Gender by Cordelia Fine, which is a fantastic book. I highly recommend it. And I actually quote a lengthy passage from the book, complete with citing the exact page numbers in my response to Vernaculus. So I'm anticipating how he's going to respond to that. But it's these people tend to rest on something when justifying the status quo. They tend to go back to something which, in my mind, is really not altogether different from phrenology or eugenics. They're trying to find some sort of biological explanation for why the status quo is the way it is. And maybe there is some biological element. It's possible, but if it is, then I believe that it is heavily exaggerated because people don't want to engage with the uncomfortable reality that maybe their base assumptions about how the world works, whether conscious or unconscious, are not justified.
And here's the other thing about that is that, as you were saying before, even if things are the way they are naturally, and that this is merely the biological outcome of things, that doesn't mean that it has to be that way anyway. Like, okay, so taking this to the racism argument for a moment. Bunch of racists, they come out and they're like, hey, we got this thing called the bell curve, and it says the black people are dumber than white people. Okay, so what do we do with that information? Do we then just say, well, no more education for black folk because they're just too stupid? Do we do that? Because that doesn't seem right to me. It seems like we should invest more time in educating them because of whatever you think is the problem. Like, it's.
Why are you being such an authoritarian? I can imagine them responding now.
Something like that, yeah, because a lot of those racists are also fucking like ANCAPs.
Well, no, they're not ANCAPs. These are just the sort of people who think that challenging their ideas is authoritarian.
Well, no, like, okay, so the actual fact of the matter is that some of the like leading people on like YouTube, for instance, or even the internet, who are like super racists, are or race realists, as I like to say, are the types to say that government should be delineated almost to the point of non-existence, and then free market capitalism will solve all problems. But they're also in favor of prescribed racial segregation, so that's odd.
Yeah, Puka pointed. I think the true Puka pointed this out. Like, if race realism does actually exist, then how can you be a libertarian? How are you going to actually advocate for the segregation of races without resorting to state violence on a massive scale? That just isn't going to work.
And to me, this is sort of like this is somewhat mirroring the question of if things are the way they are as simply the fact of the matter biologically, why does that mean we just have to stop giving a fuck about these problems? Because if there is a wage gap and you say, well, this is merely a result of biological problems, well, then we should accommodate those biological problems. Then doesn't that make any fucking sense?
Like, oh, let's take their logic to the extreme. We should get rid of all wheelchair ramps. Why the fuck should we accommodate them for their biology?
Yeah. Like, why, like, if that, why should we, hell, you know what? Why should we give a fuck about disabled people just in general? Because any sort of accommodation we make for them in any sort of aspect of life, I mean, that's just us coddling them and treating them like children anyway.
By the way, did I ever tell you that my uncle was actually the inspiration for Rain Man? I'm actually not fucking joking. Don't want to give too much about my family, obviously, but he was actually one of the two people who they actually researched when doing Rain Man. I know this probably sounds outrageous, and I guess not a lot of people might believe me, but my family actually does have a rather extensive history of autism activism. So so he was one of the people because of this. My uncle was one of the people who they went to, and I think when was Dustin Hoffman who was giving his speech at the Academy Awards, he actually thanked my uncle by name. So you can go ahead and look that up if you want.
I might have to do that.
That's just something that I thought would be interesting to bring up in case anyone would know that.
I didn't know that.
So yeah, like issues of I actually was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome myself when I was 4 years old. So like I've spent a lot of time like having to cope with a learning disability. So you know, people saying, oh, we should never do anything to accommodate the disabled, that does piss me off a lot.
I mean, really, what we should do, like taking that to its logical conclusion, why do we have psychologists giving any sort of drugs to anybody with mental instabilities? Like, why bother? I mean, clearly, we can all just pull ourselves up from our bootstraps anyway, and if we can't, then fuck them. That's just how this logic appears to work to me, and it just doesn't make any sense. It's completely devoid of any sort of empathy or human emotion, even. Like, it's computer-like in its logic in a way, but it's also fucking stupid because it's also illogical in another way because we have a value system that we're going. Humans have values in other humans, so why are we disvaluing them to the point of saying your only value is in your capability of productivity? Like,
yeah,
that blows my mind. Clearly we have more value in that. Like, you have more value in other people besides just their ability to produce. I mean, you have friends, don't you? Do you not go drinking with your friends? Do you not go and like fucking, I don't know, play video games with your friends? Something.
I think the biggest problem here, and I think the biggest problem here is that people have a limited capacity to care about each other. Like, we can't possibly care about every single person individually, so they just sort of become blurry and distant in our minds to the point where we can easily rationalize away dehumanizing them in that manner. One of the smartest things that Martin Luther King Jr. ever said in his letter from a Birmingham jail, he said that the greatest threat to racial equality was not the KKK, but the white moderate, the person who wanted peace, but not peace as in the presence of justice, but rather peace as in the absence of tension. They agreed with all those uppity black folks superficially, but they really just wanted them to go away and shut up because they didn't like having to think about it.
Oh, sort of like hashtag all lives matter.
Yes, it's the exact same fucking thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's like been like what 60 years and nothing has fucking changed. It's so astounding.
Yeah, those people still exist. They fucking exist on my Facebook wall. It pisses me off on a regular basis. I can't handle it. Like, as many people who are just like, white power means that you hate all people who aren't white, and black power means you hate people who aren't all black. I mean, and
well, okay, yeah, but the thing is that here's what drives me mad about the whole white pride versus black pride thing. First of all, white pride has almost exclusively been used by hate groups, so very different historical connotation there. And secondly, the definition of whiteness in America, at least, has been used as a gatekeeping tactic. The Irish were not originally considered white in America, and this was specifically meant to marginalize them. And the same goes for Jewish people. Most white nationalist groups still do not consider Jewish people to be white, because if they admitted that Jewish people were white, then that would be admitting that Jewish people are equals. So you have to ignore a lot of context to say that, oh, white pride is.
Yeah, I mean, there's just that in itself that kind of pisses me off, because it's just total ignorance of the history of the terminology. But there's the other thing that pisses me off is that, like, I have so many people on my Facebook wall. I have so many people who I know, like people I associate with, who are saying stupid shit like the government is trying to get you guys to fight, and that's why the Black Lives Matter stuff happened. What we really
wait, you actually know people who think that the race war is actually going to happen?
is the government trying to get us to fight each other so that we don't fight them? That's what they say.
Oh God, I'm glad I don't have friends like that.
I can't, like, but you know, I live in a small town.
I grew up. Admittedly, a lot of this is probably because I grew up in the suburbs of Washington, D.C., which is one of the most liberal, progressive areas in the entire country. But I never got a lot of that. But I am living in West Virginia now, so I probably will see a lot more people like that. So,
I mean, you know, I don't have that much of an option among the people that I associate with. Hell, my fucking brother says some stupid ass shit sometimes. I remember having a conversation with him about welfare and food stamps and shit, and he was sitting there saying that, like, yeah, sure, some people need it, but in my opinion, if you can't do something with your life that is like productive in any way, then you should just go die. And I'm like, okay, what about, like, I don't know, somebody who was productive?
Okay, so if I have an infant son, I might as well just leave him out to die then.
Yeah, I brought up infants. I brought up just the underage in general. I brought up the elderly. I brought up war veterans who have been disabled. And he's like, yeah, okay. But there's still people who are useless and they should die. And I'm like, so delineate what the fuck you mean.
Well, here's the thing, though. People, I don't recall where I looked this up, but I remember seeing something somewhere that shows that most people who are on food stamps actually are seeking work. Most people who are in unemployment programs are seeking work. So it's just the assumption that if you give people anything, any sort of social safety net, that they will automatically just become lazy.
Basically, that's what he believes. And at the same time, he also is an advocate of drug testing anybody on welfare. And when I point out to him that this has been tried before and it's been an abject fucking failure, he's like, yeah, let's just try it anyway. Like, he doesn't care. Like, he has this weird notion. And, you know, it's not like he hasn't been there. It's not like he can't empathize with the notion of being at a point in which you need help. He's been homeless before. He's had to deal with that shit. He's had to deal with not having a job and having to.
I actually almost could not attend college this year because of financial troubles. Had a lot of family issues. But yeah, the thing is, though, is that, like, the thing that really bothers me is so many of these people is that I've seen people argue against these sort of social welfare programs, relying on these social welfare programs. It's baffling. Like I think there was actually some funny video about how this. I saw something on a blog post once about how there was this person who was this Tea Party conservative who really hated Obamacare, but then like years later, after Obamacare became a thing, started begging Congress not to try to repeal it because he needed it. So it's the thing is though is that these. Now personally, again, I am a socialist with some anarchist leanings. I think that the problem with these sorts of social welfare programs is that there actually is nothing that actually obligates the government to keep them in place. They can take them away as soon as it becomes convenient to them. But I do think that until we achieve the point where we can actually start working towards an actual socialist society, which I don't think is going to happen, not really anytime in the near future, I think that we should at least try to have some sort of social safety net, some sort of social welfare program in place. So the people who just argue completely against that, that just pisses me off a lot, I guess. Don't really have a lot more to talk about, do we? I'm sorry.
What was the other thing you want to talk about? Oh, we already went over that. Let's see. We already went over the problems with YouTube culture and its over-reliance on ponage, thoughts on the recent trends of social science denialism, a few thoughts on the recent drama. Yeah, that's basically all you told me you wanted to go over anyway.
Yeah. It is almost 8 p.m. here, and I do have a few things that I do need to get done because class does start again tomorrow for me. So
that's totally all right. Thank you for showing up, and you're welcome back here anytime that you want to talk about anything.
All right, no problem. I'll catch you later.
Thank you, everybody, for showing up. Thank you to Zennistrad for showing up. If anybody else wants to have a chat at any one point, please contact me. You can do so through YouTube on the comment section or through direct messaging, or you can add me on Facebook if you want to, if you know me. Okay, guys, I'll see you next time. I'll let you know, and I'll give you an announcement whenever I have another discussion planned. I do have one that I'm trying to get with Sargon. We'll see if that happens. All right, guys, have a good one.
Good luck with that.